Bienvenue, welcome once again to another property forum. We have in the studio, as per usual, Juliet Baboolal of gunnercooke, Hamish McLay of Search Convey, of course, Chris Gilsenan of Root Home, all of which have interests in the property sector. Juliet being an accomplished legal eagle, Hamish being the Search Convey genius behind the scenes, and Chris as the one who has to sit on the front line. As he is a property developer du jour, helping and working specifically in the housing sector, specifically social housing. Today, we have a special guest. Alan Waxman works within the more luxurious end of the marketplace, and I'm going to bring him into the stage now. Welcome, willkommen. Very nice to have you with us, Alan.
Very nice to be invited to this esteemed collection of individuals, and I hope I can do it justice.
Oh, esteemed is yet to be seen. No, it's not. It's very kind of you to say that. We often debate and talk about the questions of the day, stuff that seems to be people want to talk about, nobody actually does. Here's one that people don't really make a lot of noise about, but I think they should do. If we're planning ahead, why isn't it full steam? Why don't we just go all guns blazing? I'm going to throw Hamish under the bus first of all.
What was quite interesting, within something like 12 hours of Juliet suggesting that Alan could come and join us today, a colleague of mine who's not involved with the property industry in any way at all, he got in touch with me and said, "Oh, Hamish," he said, "I've got a friend of mine, and he's having all sorts of problems with some property he's trying to get hold, not so much get hold of, but he wants to get some planning permissions sort of through. Do you know anybody that can sort of advise relative to Lambeth Council?" No, it wasn't actually Lambeth, it was somewhere else. And I said, well, there's a funny thing. I'm going to get to meet somebody who is an expert on such matters, because the number of projects he's got through in particularly in London, from what I can actually sort of gather, he's probably the best person to speak to on this particular idea of planning, because it can hold up some of these movements forwards. It's probably, well, both Chris and Juliet, because they're involved in some of these major transactions that go through, and we need somebody with Alan's expertise to sort of help with sort of design and all sorts of different sort of things that you can actually bring to the table.
Wow. Okay. What sayest you, Lady Juliet?
Yeah, I mean, it's a repeated theme in terms of delays on planning. You know, often yesterday I saw an article where someone was complaining about the council's budget, and although you're paying for a planning application and there is money that comes into the local authority in relation to the planning, the budget goes to another department, so they just haven't got the budget to increase their manpower, etc. And there's always loads of delays. I had someone waiting for a Section 106, and I mean, it took months for that to get finalised and to get issued and executed by all the parties that needed to. So that is something that's being drummed continuously, the delays caused by the local authority, not just on the planning front, but generally. But where I act for lenders, sometimes a loan might be conditional on the planning being granted, and that can hold things up and can have a knock-on effect on a load of other factors within the transaction. So it is something that needs to be addressed.
Chris, this must be the bane of your life.
There are staggering layers of complexity to the planning system. So we were selling a piece of land at the back end of last year in Cheshire, and we did outreach on the land for the vendor across nearly 500 different developers. Only 2 came back with serious proposals for this piece of virgin land to bring it forward. Yeah, they were mostly just put off by the levels of the restrictions, the complexities, the likelihood of achieving planning, and the one that went to take it forward. They do it day in, day out. They deal with those types of virgin pieces of land, and they know the planning system inside out. And that's what it comes down to. Do you need people who are on your team who are staggeringly good? The upshot of that is the barrier to entry is very high. So it's not for the faint-hearted, and it's easy to squander money wastefully. Yeah, very much so.
Alan, welcome. At the other end of the marketplace, at the more wealthy end, things are much easier. Am I right?
I wish so. And if I can just take a step back before I answer your question in detail, what is it that we're trying to do? And the way I sort of like to describe it is it's similar to designing and manufacturing a brand new luxury motor car that's never been designed or manufactured before, but building it in an old factory. And the one thing that we do not have that the car companies have is a prototype. They can sort out all their issues on the prototype before they go into production. We as developers can't do that. So whatever the project, you're going to have problems, issues, obstacles, challenges, etc., that you've just been discussing, no matter which part of the process they are. And of course, it's essential to have the right team on board. If you talk specifically about the planning hurdle, so first of all, you don't want to be banging your head against the wall, and no point going in for something which is a complete waste of time. The second thing, obviously, to have a good team with you and leave no stone unturned. And that, if it's a listed building, obviously, English heritage consultant, your planning consultant, and your architect, and make sure that they work well together. But the other thing that people often don't think about is, especially if it's a tricky one, is a planning public relations company, a PR company. And these are often people who are ex-planners, planning officers, who've gone from being gatekeepers to poachers. And they will help, in essence, smooth the way, talk to the councillors, talk to the residents in a very calm, unthreatening way in order to get the point across. So when you come to committee, you've then got hopefully a better chance of things going through.
So what we need is a bunch of fixers. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Depending on each scenario, and other people here may have done the same, but we did one project in Notting Hill. We ordered the church hall, invited all the local residents to come and give their pennies worth, and that way people can share whatever issues they have, and that way they feel, most importantly, listened to. I did the same thing in Knightsbridge, development of a muse house. Again, invited the local residents around for a glass of wine one evening, showed them the plans, got their feedback, issues, etc. And again, the point is that they feel listened to, and you can then do some tweaks in order to then, hopefully go for a smoother ride.
Chris, all you need is a few bottles of wine and a smooth talker. That seems about the size of it.
It sounds like very insightful wisdom from Alan. I love this, love the experience there. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, getting people on side. Yes, it's such a brilliant PR exercise to do that. I advocate, could I do it on the projects that we do? Probably not at the same level
Probably
of sophistication that Alan's doing, but it's certainly one we could.
It'd be a cup of PG and a bourbon biscuit, wouldn't it? Really?
It's more like my level, yes.
So Hamish, all we need is good PR, and everything just magically goes away.
I love the analogy. Going back to something Alan said, when I was working on the front line of automotive manufacture,
good Lord,
I was responsible for the introduction of new models. And you wouldn't believe this, how many minis have been manufactured sort of over the years, how many millions of them, before they decided they needed to do something about putting a fuel pump inside the fuel tank. Now, previously, it had just been one bloody great can, as you can imagine, that you stuff petrol in. It just needed a nozzle coming out, and basically everything happened. It was all a mechanical pump, and everything worked dead easily. Now they decided they needed to put some stuff inside the tank. They needed complicated pipework coming out, and it was dead easy for me to get it manufactured by somebody who was making one of them, because they could fit it, manipulate it, and all the rest of it. Now it comes to high volume manufacture. That they couldn't get the fuel tank to actually be manufactured in the way that it demanded so it could fit into the car. And it took months and months and months because we needed this fuel pump, and of course to meet the current sort of demands of sort of pollution and what have you in the exhaust system. But it was unbelievable. And when actually sort of the way Alan actually sort of spoke about that, if you don't have the manufacturing cable, you think back to when minis were introduced. And they've been introduced 30 years before they started sort of putting sort of pumps inside the fuel tanks. And they're brand new one, not capable of manufacture. They needed some big changes, big hold-ups there. Of course, the expertise. I mean, it's a matter of finding the right way to do things. And I think this is what's so good about speaking to experts. I had the design engineers. Fortunately, I was just a collaborator in all of this, really. I had all the design guys and the manufacturing people to sort of gather together. You could do that in engineering.
So it's very hard to prototype, Alan said. Although, Alan, on the many builders I've come across, every project they have seems to be a prototype for something else. Are we not getting to the point where it's rinse and repeat?
Not really, because each project's different, and you need to have the best team for that particular project. And at the moment, for instance, we're looking at a project on the river. It's a new build for 8 apartments, and it's in a bit of what I call a bit of a no man's land near an area called Pimlico. And traditionally, Landmass, because we have our own architecture and interior design team, would look to do all the interiors. But I've actually mentioned to the investors that maybe if we were to purchase this, in order to draw in the crowds, it could be good to get, a Gucci, a Louis Vuitton, a Mercedes, and Aston Martin design team type of thing, a well-known brand to draw them in. So in each case, you've got to look at what's best for the project and what's going to give the best return for the investors. And it's not a case of trying to maximize your own fees on the project, but to maximize the profit. And for that reason, each one is different, and one size does not fit all at all. Whether it comes to the project manager, when it comes to the QS, when it comes to the architect, when it comes to the interior designer, etc., etc.
But your message is still get the right team around you and you can achieve miracles, right?
Well, I'm not saying you can achieve miracles, but the thing is, each step of the way, you're going to have things to sort out. So you have to have the best team in order to do that. And I then come round in circle to something which you may not have thought about, and it's all about the dog. So the dog has a tail, and either the tail is wagging the dog or the dog is wagging the tail. And what do I mean by that? You get quite a few inexperienced investors or developers who take on a project. They're then reliant upon their team to advise them what they should do. And that's what we call the tail wagging the dog, as against an experienced individual who has the vision, who then directs it, has argy-bargy with the team, but gets the best results. And on numerous occasions, we've been brought in by investors in the south of France and in London who've come unstuck on their own projects because the advice that they've been given by their team has not been fit for market. And just to encapsulate, we had one situation where project near Buckingham Palace, and it wasn't presented properly, and the investors said, "Alan, can you help?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Well, what do you suggest?" And because I think we're pretty good at what we do, and I come from Yorkshire, I said, I don't know. And they said, "What do you mean you don't know?" So I said, with due respect, how can I advise you what we should do until we sat down with a selling agent and understand the profile of the buyer? And he said, that's interesting. None of the other designers have said that. They just show the pretty stuff. And I said, well, I rest my case. We then got the instruction, and it was a property staging exercise. We spent £30,000 on furnishing a 2-bed flat. The previous designers spent £60,000 furnishing a 2-bed flat. They were there to sell the furniture. We were there to sell the flat. You know, it's as simple as that.
Chris, which part of the dog are you?
Thanks, Gareth. I could listen to Alan all day. There's an absolute wealth of experience in what he's talking about. Little golden nuggets there. Things like that we know and we advocate for our clients all the time, to buy for demand, to make sure that what we're doing is fit for purpose, that we're providing the right product. I can't see some of the properties that we acquire requiring a Louis Vuitton spec in the social housing arena, but it's providing a product that's right for your market. So yeah, Alan talks a lot of sense.
Could I jump in there?
I think you should.
And just reiterate to Chris, if we talk about the look and feel, whether it's for a housing association, it doesn't matter whether you're doing a project in Bradford, Bournemouth, or Belgravia. The space planning is just as important. Okay, getting the space planning right is super crucial. The door openings, the flow. You know, I even got a feng shui specialist to come and check some of my projects. And on my first development, I had to move the location for the kitchen 3 times because I was clever enough to realize I had no clue what I was doing. And then secondly, when you come to the finishes, it costs the same amount of money to put one color on the wall as another color. The question, of course, is which color? And then, of course, it comes to bang for your buck. Where do you spend the money? And in a recent project, my builder said to me, Alan, who are you going to use for your kitchen? And I said, I don't know. Who do you use? He said, well, I use Bob round the corner. So I said, well, if Bob's good enough for you, it's good enough for me, because you know for a fact that if you're doing, you know, a development, whether it's a single or multi-unit, when the kitchens arrive on site, they're never going to fit. There's always something that's wrong. And you want the line of least resistance on the manufacturing process. And what is a kitchen? It's a carcass and doors. You know, you can specify the color of and finish to the door, the closers, the hinges, the splashback, the worktops, and the appliances. So you can zip it up or zip it down depending on your budget and look.
Wow. Okay, so Alan, I too could listen to you all day. So excellent information there. But I'm going to leave it with Hamish for our last words before we sign off.
Well, you sort of bring in somebody who, if you like, has such an easy life in comparison, because it's so evident the type of work that's required between, say, Juliet, for example, on the one hand, because she's looking at it from the legal perspective, but you've also got the other side of things. And this is why I particularly appreciate Alan's idea there. Get the right, and we reinforce this almost every week as we
absolutely
get the right people around you. Alan speaks of getting that PR person, getting that person who can communicate with the planning officer. Because if it's a unique, as we've said, if each new development is a unique expression, the planning officer hasn't come across it before. So he needs somebody to be able to speak to him, to just coerce him down some routes and just maybe take on board what he says. But it is, again, that planning officer is getting the relationship with the planning officer and getting the relationship with so many who are part of the team. And as I said, it's just great privilege to me to be actually sat amongst so many experts on all of this.
Oh, stop it. I've never been referred to as an expert before. All right, anyway. So, look, thank you very much, one and all, for attending. Alan, thank you so much for your time. It's been eye-opening. Hamish McLay, of course, our esteemed leader in this. Chris Gilsenan, Juliet Baboolal. My name is Gareth Wax from Many Purple Hats. We're here every Thursday chewing the fat about all things property. But until then, I thank you all. I hope you all have a marvelous week and, of course, great mental health. Goodbye.
Thank you.